What's going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 155 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC 294. And we'll be trying to just pick winners, as Jason Comtoy says in the chat this week. Yeah, I'm excited for this card. It's a fun card. A lot of bets. Before we jump into it, guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe, help us out a bit. Real quick, let's go over last week's card. I did pretty well. I finished up 3.57 units. Unfortunately, I wish I just hadn't let people talk me out of Barboza and Elkins. Like I cashed out of the money lines on both of those. I did bet in that fight, though. I had the under in the Elkins fight for a unit of plus 140. I had Elkins sub 2, which lost, Brown TKO, which lost, and Brown KO, which lost, KO round 1, which lost. But I did have Darren Elkins submission round 3 plus 2,600, which did cash last week. Gave it out on Lou Betch's show along with Edson Barboza by decision last week.
There you go. All right, John.
I
was going to say real quick to add there, that under though, cashing that by like 8 seconds. Darren Elkins.
Oh my God. It felt so good. In a year that has just been so shit betting for me, that felt very, very good. I had Haley Alatang plus 350, loads of CLV. I don't think there was, I mean, who knows? But like the dude just doesn't fight optimally and knew that outcome was possible. He looked like a huge dog. I had Christian Rodriguez for 2.5 to win 2 units. That looked pretty good. He fought well, I thought. And then the only other bet I had was Adrian Yanez for 2 units. And, oh, no, I had Tenaro Lisboa and Ravina Oliveira goes the distance for a unit of plus 140. And then I had Yanez at plus 103 for 2 units. And, you know, you and I chatted a bit about it before we came on. But I feel like, number one, it seemed like he didn't train at all for the guy he was fighting. But number two, I bet Yanez knowing full well that he could run into some trouble with the kicks, but like based on his historic performance, I was kind of anticipating he was going to pressure very aggressively and never let off the gas there. And he did that at times. And when he would pressure, he was having success, but it was like, as soon as he pressured, he'd land a combination and just step back into kicking range and just get kicked again. So, I mean, really, really low IQ performance. Yanez potentially being as bummy as I thought he might be when I bet Tony Kelly against him a couple years ago. What did you think? How'd you do?
Yeah, no, I mean, worst night. Had 2 bets, lost both. Had the under 2.5 in the Alex Siva Dixon fight. I just thought honestly that was a bad bet or bad beat, I should say. Probably should have hit, but is what it is. And then along with you, I also had Yanez, which we talked about a little bit. I just don't think conditioning well in the camp, you know. Not really ready for the leg kicks. It was about 2 or 3 and he was toast.
Very bizarre performance from him.
Right.
But yeah, we'll hop into this card. What are your thoughts on it from a betting perspective before we really hop in?
I mean, to allude to that comment, I'm mistaken. I don't remember his name that popped up, but they just pick winners. It's a heavy chalk card. It is what it is, but we'll give a lot of our opinions for the big dogs and just try to, maybe give tips on avoid for parlay busters, this and that.
Well, I have a lot of bets and I'm deeply concerned about it, but it's like one of these things where, and we'll talk about each of them. Yep. I have a lot of bets on a lot of the big dogs here. And it's like one of these types of cards where it's uncomfortable to do it because obviously, most of these guys I'm capping as underdogs, right? I just think their value versus the line.
Exactly.
But I mean, if you're going to gamble and you think there's value on lines, you can't worry about the fact that you could go 0-5 betting a bunch of big dogs, So, right. I mean, we'll jump in. First fight of the night, get it started right away. And I got reverse CLV'd fucking bad here. Holy shit. I might even add to it at where it is now. We got Sharbutin Magomedov. He's minus 275. Comeback on Bruno Silva plus 235. I have 2 units on Bruno Silva at plus 170. So I got absolutely mollywopped on the line move on this fight. Yeah. I don't know. I've historically been pretty anti Bruno Silva. I've tried to fade him a fair amount of times. And so I don't really love betting him. But I taped this guy Magomedov, and especially with a last name like that, one would expect he is a wrestle heavy fighter. It turns out that is not at all what he is. He doesn't really wrestle at all. No, he doesn't wrestle at all. Not really. He does not wrestle at all. He doesn't really have very good hands. He's not much of a boxer, but he is an excellent kicker. He reminds me a lot of kind of like a shittier version of Chris Gutierrez, just up at middleweight. He can kick with both legs pretty effectively. He's decent in the clinch, but that's really kind of his game. He plays on the outside, rips low kicks, rips body kicks, just tries to break you from there. I get big time fraud vibes from him. He does it with the guys that have gotten in the pocket with him have been able to land pretty easily. He just does a decent job avoiding it. But the level of competition has been very, very low, and his game is so predictable in his approach that I sort of feel like anybody who actually, has any kind of MMA IQ is going to be able to dictate the pocket and beat him up there. So, yeah, I like Bruno here because, look, Bruno, he's a much more experienced fighter. He's fought far better competition. We've seen Bruno deal successfully with leg kicks many times. And, the biggest weakness in Bruno's game is his wrestling, really. And it's something that's not going to get tested here. He's not going to get out-grappled by Magomedov. Like, they're going to strike, and, maybe he gets his legs kicked off or he's just turning fragile. But I kind of think Bruno is going to land a lot more head strikes. I think he's got much more opportunity to really hurt Magomedov and finish him on the feet than vice versa. I don't know. I look at the fight, and it's like you're telling me at 185 pounds, I'm going to trust basically a Chris Gutierrez clone with worse boxing against a guy like Bruno Silva. I don't love Silva, but Silva knocked out Brad Tavares. He went toe-to-toe with Alex Pereira. I know he lost his last fight, but prior to getting knocked out or prior to getting dropped there, he was beating up Brendan Allen on the feet too, So I just don't – I don't know. I like Silva here. I feel like this should be closer to a pick. I think there is a non-zero chance that Magomedov is just not UFC caliber at all, whereas we know Silva is. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Magomedov's an interesting talent. He's, like you said, good kicker. Doesn't seem like he throws a ton with his hands, doesn't have any offensive grappling. Defensive grappling wise, it hasn't really been tested much. It seems to be okay, but again, hard to really tell. But I think Bruno's pretty open defensively. I think Magomedov's pretty fast on the feet. I think you could catch him on the feet. I think you could knock him out. To me, Silva just doesn't seem like the guy that he was, and maybe it was the Pereira fight, but dude's been taking a ton of damage.
He has. My thing was, though, if you disagree, that's fine. I don't see Magomedov use his hands really at all outside of the clinch.
No, there was literally that one fight where he dropped that guy and starched him.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, though, it's not like he's going to come in here and they're going to be exchanging like boxing combinations. That's not who this guy is.
True, but I think Magomedov's pretty hard to hit. Like I feel like Bruno could just be chasing her because he's landing those kicks, trying to get out of kicking range.
I agree. I agree, but the historics of guys like Magomedov coming into the UFC haven't generally gone well. I kind of think people are just seeing a Russian who kicks a lot and are betting on it. But I don't. I'll put it to you this way: if it was minus 150, would you be intrigued by Magomedov?
What? No.
That's what I'm saying. See that's what I'm saying, though.
I wouldn't be that intrigued. I would say no.
Right. So. Yeah. Anyway,
it's just a big. I should say, to add on to it, it's a big unknown for me just because of the level of competition that you added on. The guy's not really fighting a ton, but he looks pretty solid.
He looks fine, but I'm not. I'll put it this way: there are some guys that we'll see on these kind of cards where it's like you see if their game checks out as they move up the ranks, they're going to be a UFC champion. Sharbutin Magomedov is no danger of ever becoming a UFC champion. I don't think there's any danger of him becoming a top 15 fighter at men's middleweight. Personally. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. Yep, we will.
Moving on. Shit show here. We got Victoria Dudikova, second UFC fight after that stupid Estella Nunes arm break, taking on Jin Yu Fry. Current line, Dudikova minus 525. Come back on Fry plus 400. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
This just seems like a lamb to slaughter and one of the dogs that nobody should really be backing with Fry. She has decent first layer takedown defense, but once you get her down to the mat, she's pretty helpless. I think Dudikova, should be a pretty easy fight for her. But her striking's pretty green that it's like laying this massive number. I have no interest.
Yeah, tough to make sense of it for me. I I think there's probably value on the Fry side, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to put a number on what percentage because, to your point, if Fry keeps the standing, I think she's going to win the stand-up because she's the better technical fighter. But the other side of that is Fry tends to be very, very low volume, even when she's having success standing. You know, that's how she dropped the decision to Vanessa Demopoulos. And Fry does have good takedown defense, and she's a much more experienced fighter who's fought better competition. At the same time, though, as you mentioned, when she ends up on her back, she looks helpless there. And against a woman who is a decent wrestler, I don't think she's a great wrestler, but she's decent, who's going to attempt 10 to 15 takedowns here, it's really hard to really get on a Fry side. You know, she has no finishing upside. She's low volume. 2 takedowns, she loses the fight. I just can't get there on her. I think she's probably the side, but I mean, no interest for me. Moving on, I'll keep it with you here again, Legs. We got Nathaniel Wood. He's taking on Mohamed Neof. What are your thoughts? Wood's minus 330. Come back on Neof plus 270.
I do have Wood in a parlay actually this week. I think on the feet, I think the pace is pretty wide here. I think massive volume from the Wood side. Neof to me just more or less KO reliant on the feet. And in terms of the grappling, I think if Wood actually does pursue it, I think he can have huge success. So I think the price is warranted. I think it could be even a bigger favorite.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to get like minus 270 on Wood in that range. I think he's going to absolutely shit kick Neof. I mean, he could get – we've seen Wood hurt a fair amount in his career. So Neof chin checking him, I guess, wouldn't be the most shocking outcome in the world. Neof does hit hard. He's a bit explosive. But, I mean, Nathaniel Wood's a very skilled fighter. You know, he's very good boxer, very good kicker, very good grappler, very good cardio, very good leg kicks. Whereas Neof, he tends to just be an explosive athlete for like 6 to 7 minutes and then fall off a cliff. Not a great grappler. He does have power. And so if you told me he catches Wood early in this fight, I wouldn't be shocked. But, I mean, Jamie Malarkey was kind of easily outworking him last fight before he clipped him. And Nathaniel Wood's a much better MMA fighter than Jamie Malarkey. It's not even a little close here. So, yeah, I kind of think Wood minus 400 is probably about right. I've been debating whether to lay this, but I don't – there's not much meat on the bone at 330. If there's buyback on Neof, I'd be pretty interested in it. But, yeah, I mean, I think Wood should roll here. Moving on, I do have a bet here. We got Anshul Jubli. He's minus 270, taking on Mike Breeden at plus 230. I bet Breeden at like plus 330. I think it's trending towards right here, but I kind of think it's still potentially some meat on the bone on the Breeden side of things. I don't know. I'm not enthused about having money on Mike Breeden. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, the guy's 0-3 in the UFC, and he's been violently finished twice. It's not an exciting thing. But I mean, Breeden's not an unskilled fighter. You know, he's got okay boxing. He's a decent kicker. He's a decent grappler. He's just kind of a generalist. He's okay at everything, like really bad at nothing. I guess if you wanted to make an argument for what he's bad at, say it's maybe his durability could be a bit better. But I actually think he's got a decent chin. He seems to be very, very weak to the body. But yeah, I mean, he's a solid fighter. I mean, obviously he's had a lot of fights. I think he's had 16 pro fights. The 3 fights he had in the UFC were, I mean, Hernandez and McKinney are just at a different level that he's ever going to operate on. And the Levy fight was competitive. He just kept getting hurt in it. On the other side, you have Jubli, who, Jubli had a great performance in the Road to UFC finale, just absolutely destroyed Jekka Saragay in the grappling. And I assume that's why he's getting as much love as he is here, where the price is. The guy's undefeated, comes from a grappling base, and in the first time UFC fans saw him, he looked great grappling a guy. For me, though, I don't think Jubli's a very good grappler. I don't think he's a bad grappler, but I don't think he's anywhere near, I wouldn't even call him really a plus grappler for the division. He's a decent wrestler. His jiu-jitsu's okay. His control is okay. On the feet, okay boxer, hits the body here and there, which could potentially cause problems for Breeden, but very, very defensively void himself. I don't think he packs a ton of power in his hands. Yeah, I don't know. I look at this fight and, Jubli's Saragay is his best win. The guy he fought before that, Kim, was okay, but nothing special. And prior to that, it's a bunch of wins in Matrix Fight Night, which is this horrible Indian promotion, like as bad as it gets. And I can't help but think the market, I keep hearing people be like, oh, Abu Dhabi, they're obviously making this fight for Jubli. It's a setup fight. It's like, first of all, do your fucking history and research. Like, Jubli is a Hindu. He's not a Muslim. The Hindus and Muslims historically haven't exactly been the most friendly group of people. So let's not like drop the Abu Dhabi narrative in there. The only thing Abu Dhabi has to do with this fight is Jubli's from India, which is closer to Abu Dhabi than it is to America. But second of all, he just doesn't stand out to me as a fighter with very high upside. I suppose he could grapple Breeden, but I kind of think Breeden's going to be competitive in those exchanges. I think in the striking, they're pretty similar level here. The only real edge I would give to Jubli is on just raw durability, or significant edge, I should say, is on raw durability, because obviously, Breeden's body is concerning, but I'm pretty happy to fade the undefeated guy with the guy who's lost to Alexander Hernandez, Natan Levy, and Terrence McKinney, all of whom would be large favorites against Jubli, in my opinion. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
So for starters, I did have a small bet on Jekka in that last fight. So pretty much on principle, I will be betting Mike Breeden and already did bet Mike Breeden. But to your point with Jekka, though, and pretty much everybody's fought, the guys are not good defensive grapplers. Like, Jubli's a decent offensive wrestler, but that's really about it. That's really the only way he would be able to cover this price tag, if he could just dominantly grapple Breeden. And I feel like, people are just shitting on Breeden because of the McKinney-Hernandez fights, as if Jubli wouldn't get finished in the first round also. So, like, Breeden brings a high pace, good cardio. I think better cardio than Jubli if Jubli is pushed, and this is on the feet for a decent bit. So I don't know how wrong you could be at plus 250.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you took him there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, I'm curious your thoughts here. We got Cedricus Dumas, SD Dumas, however you pronounce it, taking on Abu Azaitar. Current price, they got Dumas minus 250. They come back on Azaitar plus 210. What are you thinking here?
Well, I will say I feel like people in general, the market's just zigging and zagging a lot with SD Dumas. They bet on him against Fremd. Then, okay, they see what Fremd can do in the grappling. They bet on Brundage. And then now everybody's betting Dumas again against pretty much a I should say similar version to Brundage in that sense with the cardio. But I get what people are seeing and why they steam Dumas, because, Abu, long layoff, horrible gasser, just not the best fighter in general, and he's 37. But at the same time, like, Abu's shown a little bit of wrestling upside, has decent power on the feet, decent pace while he's still fresh. Dumas can get hit on the feet. Like, minus 240 Dumas is getting out there, and I have no interest. But at the same time, like, plus 190 on Azaitar making that long layoff, making his long return, I should say, pass. I have no interest.
Yeah, my initial thoughts when I saw the matchup were I'm definitely going to bet Dumas just because he's taller, way younger, and Azaitar's fought once in 5 years. But, I mean, then I retape it, and it's like I remember why I thought so little of Dumas and bet Fremd against him. I heard someone say this week that Dumas has like no ceiling. Like, his athleticism is so high that basically the guy's going to be at the top of the division eventually. And my thoughts on that are I just do not know how you can watch this guy fight and come to that conclusion. I will agree he's a very good athlete, but I just don't see the MMA skills.
I guess the skills don't back up the athleticism.
Yeah, I guess I was moderately impressed with him kind of playing it cool against Brundage, not Dirt,
Cody, yeah,
and staying like on his chest, like basically keeping him in guard. But I didn't see anything there that blew me away. If anything, I saw a lot of the same flaws that he had prior to that. And then the Fremd fight, you saw this guy's got no defense on the feet. He's very wilty. I mean, he was gassing out 3 minutes into that fight, and I mean, that was the quickest tap you'll ever see to a guillotine against Fremd. Yeah, he's a very dangerous fighter. He's tall, he's long, he's physical, he's fast. Could be a big problem for Abu, who's a short middleweight, who's also kind of long himself. But I mean, skill-wise, Abu's pretty bad too. I'm not gonna say he's not.
Yeah,
he's not great, but he does do some things that I think, if he doesn't just get lamped right off the bat, could give Dumas some issues. He throws a lot of leg kicks and he throws to the body a lot. I kind of feel like if Abu works his way into the fight, he could really make Dumas' life very, very difficult. The first once it gets to the 5 or 6 minute mark. And I think the general narrative is about Abu's cardio, but to be fair to him, and I don't think he'll have good cardio even if against anybody else, but part of the reason it was as ugly as it was, it's like Barriault is literally nicknamed Power Bar. The guy might have the best cardio in the division. And
we both bet him there.
Yeah, big. Yeah, he just does punishing attritional work, that guy, if you get into a slug it out war with Barriault, you're not going to win that unless you put him down very early in that kind of a fight. We've just seen it over and over because he's just going to keep pushing. It was pretty much a nightmare matchup for Abu, whereas Dumas is not going to do that. He's not going to push a heavy pace on him. He's not. Abu's going to get the fight he wants. Now, am I betting Abu? I don't know. I mean, giving up 3 inches in reach, 5 inches in height at 37, fighting once in 5 years against a young cat like Dumas. I mean, that macro backdrop is pretty fucking bad. Like, you're going to lose a lot of money betting against that dynamic over the long term. So I'm probably going to pass unless the line keeps getting out there, just because do you disagree? I feel like there's a non-zero chance that he might kick Dumas's leg 10 times and Dumas is in deep shit.
Well, like you had said, I mean, he was kicking the shit out of MAB while he was actually fresh. It's just
8 minutes. Yeah. It's really I might get there if the line keeps blowing out. I just do not see it with SD Dumas at all. I do not. I think this guy's a fraud. He's at a bad. Here's the thing. If he was an ATT and, we had seen 2 fights from him, I'd expect a reasonable amount of improvements. He's at some hometown gym. This guy's not getting any work with good fighters. I don't know.
So what are your thoughts on the total though?
What is the total right now?
So the normal total is over 1.5 minus 150. And then they have the alt under 2.5 at minus 160.
I would
prefer the under personally.
I almost think under 1.5, honestly, because I kind of think either Dumas is going to have a lot of success, or not Dumas, Abu, and Dumas could find his way out of the fight, or he's just going to lamp Abu right off the bat. I can't imagine a situation where you get this very, very technical performance from Dumas over 15 minutes of him just volume striking and leg kicks and jabs. That's not who this guy is, I kind of like the plus money under 1.5. What are your thoughts?
I was going to say you're probably going to get an even better number on that because it's actually trending. People are
yes, but what are your betting thoughts on it?
That's what I was telling you. I like the under 2.5 at minus 160. I would play that.
Okay. All right. Fair
enough.
Moving on. Banger fight here. And I have a decent. Not a big bet. 1.5 units on Victor Henry for me, though. Current line, we got Javid Basharat minus 625. Comeback on Henry plus 450. The line is pretty outrageous to me. I don't know. I think Basharat, he's the more talented fighter. His career is probably more on the upside since he's 29 and Henry's 36. But when taping the fight, unless Basharat can get to top position and control him very, very easily, I think this is going to be a pretty competitive fight. And given that, a Sunsao Gravely and Barcelos weren't really able to easily control Henry, I don't really think Javid can. And I think Javid's a talented fighter. Obviously, he's got good leg kicks, got a decent jab, but he really hasn't been meaningfully tested. He had a pretty easy regional level of competition. Came into the UFC, beat, I think it was Trevin Jones he beat first. Trevin Jones, one of the worst to ever do it. Beat Gravely in his next fight, which was a pretty impressive win. I'll be honest. That is a decent win. And then in his third fight, he fought Mateus Mendonça, who is also one of the worst to ever do it in the UFC. I just don't. And when I watch these fights, the one thing I keep noticing with Javid is if you stay at the end of his range, he's very, very good. Good jab if he keeps at the end of his range, good kind of pull counter. But if you get inside of his reach, he doesn't have much head movement on the inside. He's kind of easy to hit if you can pin him down. I actually think his cardio it's not bad by any means, but I actually think it's a bit, I don't know. It looked like it was flagging a bit late against both Mendonça and against Gravely to me. It's just that both of those guys were dead gassed out. And now he's fighting a guy in Victor Henry, who, while Henry's 36, I mean, the dude's a gangster. He's been around for years. He beat Anderson Dos Santos regionally. He beat Kyler Phillips regionally right before Phillips went on this run. Obviously, he burst onto the UFC scene and beat Barcelos. Took an L to Rafael Assunção, and then in his last fight, he also beat Tony Gravely. Both of them look good against Gravely. It's a common opponent. Both put up pretty good offensive statistics in that fight. And I look at this fight, and I got Henry with a lot more experience, and Henry also throws just an absolutely comical amount of volume. We saw him land over 150 significant strikes twice in 3 UFC fights. Like, that is really, really impressive. He rolls shots very well. He's incredibly durable. He's never been knocked out. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I just look at the fight, and I just see it being very competitive, is my view. I'd favor Basharat on being younger and I think having a bit more physicality to his game. But Henry's going to push a kind of pace that he's never had to be in there with before in his career. And it's always interesting to see how guys respond to that. At the end of the day, I lean the Basharat side, but I think it's going to be a close fight. And I think close enough that I'm pretty happy to take a shot on the Henry side here. What are your thoughts, Lags?
Well, for starters, kind of similar-ish, I should say, to a fight you talked about earlier in the card. I struggle with these bigger favorites determining, should Basharat be like a minus 350, 400 versus where he's at right now. You know what I mean? But conversely to you, I actually do think he can get top time here. He can mix in the takedowns, and I think he has pretty solid distance management on the feet.
Yeah, but do you think he can get top time like 10 minutes of control or like a couple takedowns and 3 minutes of control?
Like 5 to 6, yeah. Somewhere in the middle there.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I guess.
So you think the line's right?
No, I mean, no. Like, I wouldn't bet it at minus 600. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Like,
I'm not saying would you bet it.
Like,
I'm saying
I just feel like this should be more like 4 to 1.
I just feel like, I guess, to get to a place where you're saying Basharat should be in the minus 400 to 500 range, much less 600. In my opinion, you have to think he's going to have easy grappling success and also have just much higher finishing upside here. And he's fighting a guy who's
I wouldn't say the finishing
finished.
upside is that much higher, but I would say I do think that takedown upside and grappling upside is there.
Tajik says Basharat should be around minus 700.
That
seems like a really random number.
I would say the only way you could think that is if he has a massive finishing upside. And I mean, kind of like what you just said, I don't see that. Henry's.
The math just doesn't support it. The math doesn't support the current line. Like, the actual math and statistics of the two of them in the UFC does not support the current line. Neither does the power ratings of their strength and schedules. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Moving on, though.
I support you, John.
We got Trevor Peck taking on Muhammad Yahya. Peck's minus 158. Comeback on Yahya is plus 138. Any strong thoughts here?
Well, we were talking about, narratives for Abu Dhabi, this and that. The only reason Muhammad Yahya is getting a fight really is because he's from that part of the country. I don't think anything is stand outish from his tape. He's pretty wooden on the feet, super hittable. Don't think his durability is great. He's shown a little bit of wrestling upside, but not to where I would say he would effectively utilize it. Lower level guys he's been fighting. I think Peck on just raw durability, power on the feet. I think he finishes him. I think this should be pretty easy work.
Yeah, I'm inherently intrigued by anybody who's an underdog to Trevor Peck, just because I really just rate his skill set very low. But I will say I do have some early Peck prices here at like minus 110. I'm just not sure what I want to do with them, if I want to cash those out or ride them, because I'm not. I
would ride them out personally.
I see it the same way you do, but for me, as I said, I just feel like Peck has so many vulnerabilities in his game. It's just he is a guy I'm actively looking to fade, like, going forward in his UFC career. Yeah. He is not good at MMA. I will give him credit for being tough and durable and hitting like a truck, but he just doesn't have the skill sets to really compete in this division. And so a guy like Yahya, I don't really rate Yahya very much. I think it should be Peak all day, but I don't know. I mean, Yahya can mix in a takedown or two. He could, get. I mean, who knows? Like Peak could just empty the tank in a round trying to murder him. Kind of to Pepe's point, everybody's betting Trevor Peak. Now, I will say the line is moving that way.
Moving, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I might just ride it because I do agree with you, but I also feel it feels dirty to me having money on Trevor Peak with a minus number in front of it, So
that's fair. That's fair.
Moving on though, Muhammad Mokaev taking on Tim Elliott. Mokaev, huge favorite, minus 425. Come back on Elliott plus 325. I bet Elliott at plus 410. I could go into an in-depth breakdown on the scrambling here, but it's honestly not really like worth it. The truth is we all kind of know the dynamic here. Mokaev's going to try to do one thing and one thing only because he isn't a very good striker. He's going to try to wrestle your ass off, and he's going to try to control you and or submit you. Obviously, that's what he's going to try to do to Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, not a man who is very unfamiliar with people who have tried to do that to him. Elliott's a tremendous scrambler. He's a fine striker. He's hung with pretty good strikers on the feet. Definitely the better striker in this matchup. And he's a very good wrestler himself. And so I would agree with just about any take that is Muhammad Mokaev has the higher ceiling. I mean, at this point, Elliott's 36 years old and Mokaev's very, very young and showcasing, the kind of game that, is what wins fights in the UFC. So I look at this fight and I still think the line is crazy because if you actually look at the guys that Muhammad Mokaev has fought in the UFC, Cody Durden, which is an impressive win, except he literally flying kneed Durden in the first exchange of the fight and submitted him. Like we got really nothing out of that fight. Charles Johnson, it's whatever. I mean, he basically did to Charles Johnson what Cody Durden did to Charles Johnson. And what Tim Elliott would probably do to Charles Johnson. Malcolm Gordon, again, like the worst fighter in the division, who also took his back twice in that fight and got 3 minutes of control against Mokaev in that fight. And then obviously in his last fight with Rafael Filo, and Filo's not great, but I mean, Filo almost ripped his knee off in the fight. And I look at those fights and look, I would expect a young guy like Mokaev to kind of have some struggles here and there against, UFC caliber fighters. But when I look at those fights in the context with this, it's like, would Tim Elliott struggle much more with those guys than Mokaev did? I don't think so. I think he'd make pretty easy work of all the guys Mokaev's beaten, except Durden. I don't think he'd make easy work of Durden. But again, Durden
I don't think
was like
Johnson
a flying.
Either, personally. That's just me.
Johnson would be an interesting fight, but I mean, Durden was a complete high roll. Like that is just I just don't put any stock in that outcome of that fight. And so here, but I mean, 2 fights ago we saw Tim Elliott fight Tagir. Personally, I would favor Tagir outright over Mokaev at this point in their careers, like pretty easily. I heard someone call him a fraud this week. It's like, the fuck are you talking about? Like Tagir's an absolute beast, and Elliott basically counter-grappled him through that entire fight until the last 2.5 minutes when he got tired and hung with him striking as well. And so I look at this fight, it's like, well, we have Elliott who fought Tagir and Aliskerov, who combined went 2 for 17 on takedowns against him. Even when they were able to get takedowns, he was scrambling up and scrambling to dominant positions a lot of the time. Can I really project Mokaev, at least while they're fresh, to drastically outperform Aliskerov or Tagir in the grappling? If you want to say he is an exceptional, like best talent we've ever seen, I'd say, okay, so maybe he outperforms them a bit. But I don't think there's any way you can think he's going to ragdoll Elliott. It just doesn't make sense. And then you factor in the fact that on the feet, Elliott's probably the better fighter here. Now, I think Mokaev's got a lot more finishing upside since, he's got a dangerous submission game and Elliott has a tendency to put his head in stupid places. But at the same time, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is Tim Elliott's a legend of the sport who has been only lost to the best guys in this sport. He's a tremendous grappler himself, and he's the best grappler Mokaev has fought in his entire career by a big stretch. And keep in mind, 2 fights ago, Muhammad Mokaev, you have 3 minutes of control and 2 back takes to Malcolm Gordon. Like, that actually happened, I'm not making it up. I am very, very bullish on Mokaev's career trajectory, but this is like a big jump in competition, and he's being priced as if it's a slam dunk. I lean the Mokaev side just because I think he's going to make Tim work very, very hard for a lot of this fight. And Elliott's probably going to he's probably going to lose the third round at a pretty high clip. But I think the first couple rounds of this fight are going to be pretty fucking tight. I just don't see how you can get to minus 400 on the Mokaev side. What are your thoughts here?
What I will start off with is talking what you said there with the round 3. I mean, going back to his last fight with Altamirano, I mean, I know that was fought at a crazy high pace, but I mean, his gas tank did not look good there. And I think, again, Mokaev is going to push a pretty heavy grappling pace here. So I differ from you a little bit also because I feel like Tagir, I don't rate Tagir as a great wrestler personally. And that's why I bet Tim Elliott in that spot. So I don't know. I think Mokaev gets takedowns. I think he probably finds a late sub here.
So you think? So do you not rate Aliskerov as a good wrestler? Like Aliskerov absolutely mugged Joe Benavidez. I mean,
yeah,
and he went 0 for 7 on takedowns against Elliott. You know, like, I'm not saying Elliott's a lock or even that I favor him. I don't. I'm just saying you would really need Mokaev to outperform anybody who's ever fought Tim Elliott in the grappling to say this line is right.
I think it's possible. And then to add on to that, it could be. I think it could be. And then in the striking too, like, I mean, I get it. You do think Elliott is a better striker, but he's so janky. He's pretty hittable himself. Like, I think Mokaev, it could explode him. I'm not saying he's like a great striker.
Him, but I mean, Elliott outlanded Nicolau at distance like 3 fights ago. Like, he is a better striker than Mokaev. I'm certain of that. As janky as he may be.
Yeah.
You know? Again, it's a small bet for me. I don't think it's a lock by any means. I'm just saying.
Right. Where the line's at, there's value at it, and you're not being a pussy.
Well, that's part of it, but it's also just like, in general, guys fighting, going from Malcolm Gordon to Jafel Filo to Tim Elliott, like, one of these things is not like the others, you know? And he's still getting priced like he's fighting that tier of fighter, which to me doesn't make any sense. Moving on. Saeed Nurmagomedov, Muin Gafurov. Current price, we got Saeed minus 207, Gafurov plus 177. That's kind of interesting. I honestly thought I missed the boat on Nurmagomedov, and that is, because it was minus 250 last time I looked. I'm a little tempted on the Nurm side here, to be honest. I don't really rate Gafurov that much. I bet Castaneda fairly large against him, which didn't end up looking like that good a bet. That was actually a fairly close fight, but Gafurov massively outperformed his historics in that fight in terms of like cardio. And I'm not ready to say it's more than an outlier, but like, even if we just say that is the new norm for him, I look at these fights and their striking is very similar. Both throw a lot of spinning shit. Like, it's a lot of that, like that dag Muay Thai stuff that they do out there. Kind of like how Zabit used to fight. And I think Nurm is a good bit better at it, as well as being taller and longer and just generally a bit more tested against like high level fighters than Gafurov is. The best argument, in my opinion, for the Gafurov side is, maybe he could grind Nurmagomedov here. But I mean, dude, the only guy to really grind Nurmagomedov is Kakramanov. And in my opinion, Kakramanov is a championship caliber talent. I just don't see that in Gafurov at all. You look at the other guys who've tried and they haven't had a lot of success. Nurmagomedov's a decent wrestler himself. In my opinion, he should be able to keep the standing and really pick apart Gafurov with ease here. I'm not saying he should be like a huge favorite, but I do think he is just much more trustworthy. I think he's got a lot more finishing equity in this fight. And honestly, low key, I think he could have some grappling equity himself, So curious what your thoughts here, Lags.
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to you. I would say the only other thing I would say on the Gafurov side, leaning to his side in terms of like credence to that side. I mean, Nurm doesn't throw a ton on the feet, so like work rate in general, like it could end up being close. But yeah, no,
I mean, he outlanded Martinez last fight, though.
Yeah, that's true.
God. I was saying, I mean, he beat like Douglas. I mean, he should have gotten the decision against Martinez, and he beat Douglas De Andrade as well. Like, Nurmagomedov to me he's fairly established at what he is at this point.
No, he's fairly solid. I'm not trying to like make a argument for the Gafurov side. I lean with you as well on the side, but I just giving credence to the dog. I feel like if anything, maybe he could keep it close on work rate, but yeah, no, I think Saeed should be fine keeping on the feet.
I guess my question, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. Like, do you think in work rate that like it would be him like grappling Saeed or outstriking him? Because I'd be personally very surprised if he outstruck Saeed.
I wouldn't say outstriking. I would say I could see a scenario where the striking could just be close.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's reasonable.
That's it. I'm not saying outstriking, but yeah.
Yeah. I just rate. I mean, I feel like I know people don't like to talk about this in MMA because tape rules all and whatnot, but like if you were to power rate it like you would cap any other sports, like my power rating for like Saeed, just based off his own elo and performances in general, would be a lot higher than where I have Gafurov for this kind of fight. Like I like Castaneda as a fighter, but he's like a mid-tier fighter. Like there's no danger that John Castaneda is coming for like the top 15.
No, it was pretty much just all pace in that matchup.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I differ. And that's what I was saying. That's where I differ a little bit in this matchup. Whereas I don't think Saeed brings any kind of a pace. It's pretty pedestrian, I would say.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. We'll see what happens. I'm leaning the Saeed side though.
Yeah.
Moving on though. This is a fight. Ikram Aliskerov. He was supposed to fight Nasruddin Imavov, which was a great fight. Now he's fighting Warley Alves. The line currently minus 550 on Ikram Aliskerov. The comeback on Warley Alves plus 400. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
This should be pretty easy work, I think, for Aliskerov. Alves, pretty known gasser. Yeah, you think? Yeah, that. I'm going to pick Aliskerov to win. Alves is a known gasser. I mean, his best chance is round one finish here, catching him, and even then, it's pretty low percentage. I think this is Aliskerov pretty much all day.
Yeah,
I think late sub was. I would add on late sub would be the only way I would actually bet the fight, but
I got nothing for you, Mbe here. If it was like 170, Warley, I'm open to betting Warley at like 170 against new untested guys. I do not think him going up to middleweight makes terribly much sense for him, though. This guy, he was not a huge 170, which makes me think he's just put on some fat. And he was gassy to begin with, and now he's going up there fighting a guy like Aliskerov. And I mean, the grappling gap is huge for Aliskerov here. The striking gap should be pretty huge for Aliskerov here. The cardio gap is pretty huge for Aliskerov here. I kind of think Warley needs to just wobble him early in this fight. Otherwise, it probably goes downhill in a hurry. And, I mean, obviously he could, but to me, this is Aliskerov all day and fairly easily. I kind of think even at minus 550, it's like if you're looking to parlay, I think it's almost – I don't want to say free square again because I got myself in trouble saying Kanaka Murado is a free square, but – it feels like a free square to me. I think he should have zero trouble with Warley here. Moving on. Another cool fight here. Magomed Ankalaev, current price minus 350. He's taking on Johnny Walker. Comeback is plus 285. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to get there on Walker, but I just can't. I think he has theoretically some upside in this fight just because, Ankalaev has this tendency to just not wrestle until he gets himself into trouble and then wrestle. And Johnny Walker is not a guy you want to get yourself in trouble with. And even in the stand-up, I mean, Ankalaev, he's a much more technical striker, but Walker does kick legs a lot. And I do worry about how Ankalaev takes leg kicks. Like the way he was reacting to them versus Blachowicz was just very, very concerning to me. So yeah, I mean, I think those are the paths for Walker. He could damage him with leg strikes, and obviously Walker's a big enough hitter to put anybody out. But at the same time, I mean, Ankalaev, he's just a much more technical striker. He's much faster. I think he hits harder. He's much more durable, and we know Walker's glass. And at the end of the day, if he does do what he normally does, at some point, yeah, this is what Pepe just said. This is what's going to happen. He's going to comfortably lose 7 minutes of the fight and then go, oh, wait, we're allowed to wrestle. Okay. And then he's going to go take Walker down and smash him. Like that seems like the inevitable way this fight ends. The thing is, I can imagine a Walker win. I just feel like Ank has so many tools to win this fight. It's like really hard to put Walker past like plus 300 in the fight. That seems like a reasonable line to me. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's weird because again, Ank's massive favorite, and the guy work rate wise, like we talking about a little bit, it's not great. But at the same time, to me, this new version of Walker, this more patient, reserved, I don't think his floor is that much higher. Like
Yeah.
him being super aggro like he used to, I would give a ton of credence here. But if he just stands back and it's a technical striking fight with some Ankalaev wrestling mixed in, I think the line's right.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. Like, I feel like the best chance Walker has to beat a guy like Ankalaev is to go just complete rabies early and hope to catch him something stupid. Like Walker,
Right,
I give
because
him
to
credit for this.
I was gonna say because for now, I should say his floor and ceiling to me seem pretty close to each other. If he's not going to go super aggro,
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give him some credit for the Smith fight. It was a very impressive performance to me, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Ankalaev. And I also
no.
kind of suspect that at some point, if he just tries to play that kick first game, then at some point he's going to end up just getting countered hard down the pipe that get put out that way. But yeah, I'm not interested in Walker. I am interested in this fight though. Coming up, we got Khamzat Chimaev. He's minus 335. The comeback on Kamaru Usman plus 275. Sure, everybody saw that video today. No one knows if Usman said his knee popped or Cosmo. We're still not sure what was said.
Yep.
Until I hear something about it, I can't really I'm not going to go full man of the library on you guys and just try to pretend that I know. And
You're not 50 units Khamzat? What?
50 units Khamzat. We're not exactly sure what was said. But what I will say here, in terms of the fight itself, I have 2.5 units on Usman plus 260. General thoughts are, I feel there's a couple ways to look at the fight, right? Stylistically, I mean, they're similarly built fighters, right? Both come from wrestling backgrounds. Obviously, Usman was nearly an Olympic wrestler. Khamzat had a lot of freestyle success in Europe. Both are just top level wrestlers. Striking, I mean, Khamzat, I don't like his striking just because of how defensively vulnerable he is, but I do have to give credit. He does hit hard and he will come for you and just basically just never let up on the volume. Whereas Usman, I think he's a bit more tactical in his approach there. Certainly more technical, more defensively sound by a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think they match up. I think they match up interestingly. I would favor Usman in a nutshell, though, if it wasn't short notice. My general thinking is, look, Chimaev's had 5 fights in the UFC or 6 fights in the UFC. Of those fights, 5 of them have been dominant. But it's consider where the dominant fights happened. John Phillips, Reese McKee, Mir Shardy KO'd in 1 punch, The Leech, Kevin Holland. Those are the dominant performances for Khamzat Chimaev in the UFC. And I asked myself, I'm would Kamaru Usman not be equally as dominant against those fighters? He certainly would be against every single one of them, and so the one time Chimaev wasn't dominant was against Gilbert Burns, and he barely got over the finish line in that fight and barely edged that decision. Meanwhile, Kamaru Usman did fight Gilbert Burns, and he beat the ever-loving shit out of Burns and finished him in the 3rd round of that fight. And so with that dynamic, it's I have Usman who's better statistically in the striking. To me, his striking by tape looks better to me. In the grappling, I think it's kind of a wash because Usman's an elite defensive wrestler. And so if I was just breaking down the fight, all things being equal on a full camp, it's okay, Khamzat's younger. He has more upside to improve. But we just have so many certainties on the Usman side. He's better statistically. He's fought better competition. He matches up well. The one common opponent he also dumpstered. I'd probably line him minus 185, all things being equal. Thing is, they're not equal here, right? Because it's it is short notice. He is 36. He's coming off 2 losses. And it's up a weight class. So you have to absolutely dock him for that, right? So the question is, how much can you reasonably dock him within a reasonable degree of certainty? And to me, I'm I feel saying 15% is probably fair with maybe a 10% buffer on either side of that. So it's anywhere from Usman minus 122 to Khamzat minus 150, I think would be reasonable prices in this fight. Just going into it beforehand, obviously the fight could look very, very different than that, but I feel that is kind of where your range of implied probability should be coming down here, or where they do for me. And so I'm like, all right, so it's basically, I'm basically saying it's minus 110 shade Khamzat. But if that's the case, I mean, plus 260, and I think it's basically a pick 'em fight. You got to fucking send Usman. So I have 2.5 units on him. It's unfortunate because I would have really liked to have gotten it on a full camp because I would have loved to bet Usman as a dog, huge on a full camp. I'm only medium on him here just because there is a lot going on. And I really do think there's a real chance that Khamzat could come out aggressive and just put him out quick. With that in mind, if he doesn't, though, and Usman survives the storm and settles into the fight, I think he's probably going to take over and break Khamzat. I just think he's a more technical fighter with much more proven cardio and experience. I like Usman if this fight goes late quite a bit. What are your thoughts?
I think that's probably the argument I would say here is that this fight going late, whether or not it does. And that's to me, if Khamzat, the massive favorite, is justified, because to me, seeing the minus 300, whatever it is now, I don't see it as, he's going to dominantly wrestle Usman and it's going to be a 15-minute decision. Like, to me, it's coming out, sparking him in the first round, bigger athlete, huge physicality. And it could happen. And I kind of lean that way a little bit, just because it's like moving up to 185 pounds. I think Khamzat's much bigger. I mean, the short nose nature is not great either. But I'm not throwing a bunch of these narratives in there like Usman's washed, this or that. Like, he had a competitive decision with Leon last fight, and then he got knocked out in a fight that he was dominating previously. So I think people just saying, Khamzat's going to like wreck him, dominate this or that. I feel like you should just play the round one.
Well, I feel like that's where right?
Yeah.
Like Usman, like the Usman wash narrative, it's like, we know he was hurt going. He was so hurt they had to fly Colby Covington in overnight to weigh in case Usman couldn't fight against Leon. And they were still in a very competitive fight. It's like, he wasn't in a competitive fight with some fringe ranked guy. It's like, it was with Leon Edwards, the fucking champion, like people are acting like, his knees they're horrible. He has no knees. It's like, we've known this for 10 years. He didn't have knees when he started in the UFC,
Yep.
So, but I'm with you though. I actually do sort of lean the under.
I was just going to say the under 2.5, I think, is good. Yeah.
I mean, if let's say Khamzat, I think that Khamzat's best path is a very early finish here. But if he doesn't get that, I don't think Usman is like, Usman hits different than Gilbert Burns. Very, very different. I don't think he's gonna if Usman gets into gear, it's like, is Usman gonna drag him over the finish line, just jabbing him? I kind of feel like if Usman starts putting it on him, there's a pretty good chance he's gonna finish him down the stretch in this fight. Yeah,
so, I think there's massive questions on the durability really with him.
Yeah, are there massive questions? The guy's been knocked down once in his career and it was a head kick.
No, I'm talking about Khamzat.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm expecting it to be a firefight, to be honest. I would like it to be the under.
Like, I think Khamzat's just going to come after.
He is, and I don't really
he always
see.
Does.
I feel I guess the only case against the under is like maybe Khamzat does try to wrestle him like very, very hard, and they end up in like a clinchy, drag it out fight where they're basically just exchanging like over under positions. Like, I could kind of see that because I've seen some people say that Usman is better than or Khamzat's a better wrestler than Usman. It's like, Usman almost made the Olympic team, man. Like, go watch those takedowns, like how deep Colby was getting against Usman in their second fight. Like, Colby's a serious wrestler, and he was getting super deep and not getting him down. Like, I do not think it's going to be easy for Chimaev to get him down, even if he wants to.
No, and that's kind of what I was alluding to a little bit in the beginning with him, the massive favorite. I don't think it's grappling based just because of like, okay, he's dominantly grappling Reese McKee, Lee, Holland. Like, none of these guys have decent wrestling backgrounds, come from wrestling, like a semblance of a takedown defense.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Hermanson wrestled Khamzat for 2 rounds and like in a wrestling match, and he got owned in the first round, but was pretty competitive in the second round. These guys are not the same in terms of their pedigree. I do agree with Mbe that there's a fairly significant BJJ edge for Khamzat here. If it comes into play, I'm just not sure that it will. So we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like the grappling is just a massive question mark with that move up in weight, just the physicality,
There's a
We'll
lot of
see.
questions about
I mean,
it,
there are, but I feel like in terms of the grappling, like I don't think it's as easy as some people think, and neither do you. So,
but you don't get to put it this way. One day I'll be able to tell my kids that I was able to bet Kamaru Usman at plus 250 against any fighter. That's not something that really happens. The guy's been chalked up at minus 500 for most of his career, and he lost a close decision to the current champion and is now apparently a washed fighter. So we'll see. Maybe he is washed.
He went from minus 200 in that fight to plus 260.
Yeah. Moving on. The main event, the rematch. Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski. Line's a bit tighter now than it was the first time. Makhachev minus 252, comeback on Volk plus 212. What are your thoughts?
I was actually looking at it. I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar. Pretty sure I thought the first fight was 260.
I bet Islam minus 330 in the first fight. It's possible I got beat by the number, but
yeah,
he was minus 355. He closed that.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Islam closes my second leg of that parlay. To me, not a ton changes. I mean, obviously, you could just say narrative-wise, all right, everything's worse on the Volk side, like short notice, going to Abu Dhabi. I 100% agree with that, but to me, stylistically, also, like, I think Islam can get the takedowns, gets the dominant positions. Like, I don't think, I don't see any issue with it. So yeah, I think Islam moneyline solid piece.
Yeah, my thing is, I feel, and you tell me if you disagree, but on rewatch that first fight, I think it was less competitive than what it was made out to be honest.
On rewatch, yeah.
Yeah,
I was watching it live, and I'm like, he might have lost this because in the original fight, I bet him in the over 1.5 rounds at like minus 165.
Well, the first time it happened, I was slamming Islam in the middle of round 5, like minus 250 live, like over and over.
Okay.
Again. Yeah. But on rewatch, it's just like, look, Volk was very, very competitive with Islam in that fight. Like, there's no question about it. He had his competitive moments. He had his moments. He won 2 rounds off him. No one else has done that. At the same time, though, I mean, the striking was close in that fight. Islam wobbled him a couple times on the feet. They were very, very competitive until round 5, like the second half of round 5. They were pretty close to 50-50 on the feet the entire time in that fight. And you could see that Islam, his length was giving Volk some issues, and he was landing with a lot more power than what Volk was landing with throughout that fight. On top of which, you had Islam get 7.5 minutes of back control in the fight. Like the one time he took Volk down in the middle of the octagon, Volk doesn't really have a way to get up in the middle that isn't giving his back up. And Islam was able to take his back fairly easily and control it. And so I'm thinking about it, and I actually think Islam has more grappling upside than what he did in the first fight. I feel, I'm not saying he necessarily will have more success grappling, but I actually think I think that was on the lower end of the amount of success Islam is likely to have.
Yeah, that's fair.
Over the course of 25 minutes. Like I could just very easily imagine him landing, 2 takedowns in the middle of the octagon and just easily consolidating 2 rounds. It's like, if this is going to be a competitive striking fight on the feet, and we've seen it, it was that. And you have all of that grappling upside on the Islam side. It's very hard just with that dynamic in a nutshell to make Volk better than 30%, 25 to 30% to win this fight. Then on top of it, you take the fact that Volk's right off the couch. Like he was not in camp. He's off the couch. Was at 185 apparently when I saw, or no, what did they say?
181.
181, yeah, coming in to fight Islam here. That he's not in fight shape. He's coming to Abu Dhabi. I actually think Australia very likely played a role in that fight. And I only say that because did it make Volk better? No, but I mean, the time difference certainly had an impact on Islam. The crowd certainly has an impact on judges and whatnot. We cap every professional sports team gets a 2 to 3% implied more added to them for home field, but we're not doing with fighters. Like that doesn't make much sense. So it's like now
he gets some added confidence there.
For sure. And just with the judges, everything, every moment Volk had, the crowd was going absolutely bananas. To now we're going into Islam's territory in Abu Dhabi here on short notice, like the shortest of notice. Volk's coming off an injury and off the surgery. It's like I would reline Islam without anything else involved at minus 300. When you factor in all the macro stuff from the outside, I feel like you have to deduct at least like 5% from it. Like I think Islam minus 400 is fine here. I have him to win 2 units at minus 225. I think minus 250 is fine. I'm not even an Islam fan. Like I would love to see like Volk win. I love Volk. I just feel like this is just a terrible, terrible matchup for Volkanovski, especially on short notice.
Yep.
So
I'm curious as to why he. No. I mean, obviously, like it's a title shot, this and that, but like, why after the injury, the Topuria fight is already looming in 145? Like, why are you trying to chase this rematch? You know.
Well, he's definitely getting paid for one.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
You know, maybe human. You have to look at what lightweight. There's a lot of like talents at lightweight. You know, coming up through it, like Arman. I would have said Grant Dawson prior to Bobby Green killing him. Yeah. Gamrot. You know, it's possible Dana said to him, "Look, if you really want the rematch,
we'll pay
now or never." You know, that's
true because he probably wouldn't be getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he lost. It's not like he lost his title. Islam defended his title, you know? So,
right.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, those are our thoughts here tonight, guys. I'm nervous. A lot of big dogs bet. Very sweaty. Very potentially sweaty. So,
and then on that main event, as we're still talking about it a little bit, any thoughts on the under?
I don't really like the under. I thought I would, but I feel like Volk's recovery is really, really good. I will say, I don't think he's quite as unchokeable as people are making it out to be. Like, if Islam gets a good position on top of him with his back flattened out, I think Islam can submit him here.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a narrative that's getting, like, spit around here, and it's like, a lot of other guys from that gym have gotten submitted. I am not really buying that Islam Volk is an elite defensive jiu-jitsu player, but I don't know. Do you like it?
I mean, I have Islam parlayed. I mean, I think the fight doesn't go at minus 120-ish, minus 125. I think it's not bad. But again, matchup wise, though,
the under was a big number. It was like a big plus number. I thought you were going to tell me it was like a plus number.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys. Oh, sorry. You got anything else?
No. You're good.
Thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have a week off next week.
Let me check that.
I think, and then we got Sao Paulo the week following that.
We do have a week off.
We have a week off, so we will not be on stream next week. We will be the following week. We got UFC Sao Paulo. It's Angela Hill season, in case anybody needed reminding.
Derek Lewis season. Just kidding.
I'm not kidding. I am betting Derek Lewis. I am.
All right.
I am. First of all, I am so upset. I had like $1,500 on Blades at like plus 165. That fight was
painful.
That it's canceled is painful because I legitimately feel like Blades is probably minus 250 in that fight. We're not even. I was gonna say we'll save it for 2 weeks. Yeah, we'll save it for 2 weeks from now. I'll just kind of get my thoughts on Jelton then. But yeah. Oh, Lags, real quick. What was the promo we ran last time? I want to run it again.
Ooh. What was the promo that we ran last time?
They had to shout out the pod. They had to
subscribe,
and share.
So shout out the pod. Shout out the pod. Tag both of us. And you have a chance to win.
And you have to share it on Twitter from YouTube.
Share it on Twitter. Share it on Twitter from YouTube.
If you guys do that, okay. You have to tag Lags and myself. Well, you have to like and subscribe to the show. Share it from YouTube to Twitter. Tag Lags and myself shouting out the show. I will give out $150 to one person who does that next week. Have to be a minimum of 5 entrants. That is the rule. If there's at least 5 entrants, I will do it. We only had 8 last time, which was really disappointing because we got to do the wheel. Like people don't want free money. Yeah, like Pepe, he got to do the wheel this week, and it was like 100 people on there. Like that's what I'm looking for. Like give us like 50 to 100 entrants on here. We'll run the wheel. It'll be fun. There'll be a lot of pageantry. 2 weeks from now, someone will get $150. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube, tag Lags and I, and shout out to Club and Sub Podcast. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. I hope everybody has a good weekend this weekend. Everybody does well on their bets, unless you're betting all chalk, in which case, go fuck yourself. What were you going to say, Lex?
And the last thing to add, it is Penn State weekend. Fuck Ohio State.
It is Penn State
weekend. +4.5. Take it.
Drop a like, subscribe. Good luck this weekend, everybody. Peace.